Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so thrilled to be talking about fantastic costume designs in some of your favorite Netflix series. We are thrilled today to be joined by costume designer LouLou Bontemps, who's the costume designer on The Gentleman, Gianni Casalnuovo, who is the costume designer for Ripley, and Michael Wilkinson, who is the costume designer for Three Body Problem. And LouLou, starting with you with The Gentleman, there's such an exploration and story in terms of the different class structures of all of the characters and the worlds that they come from. And I was interested in what was your starting point in approaching costumes and approaching some of the research when there's so many elements at play when it comes to British class in the series.
Wow. I mean, the huge difference between the series and the film is that there are so many different characters, so many different gangs. Essentially, Guy likes to create this gang culture in all of his projects. So it always starts with a conversation with Guy, lots of conversations with Guy. And of course, we started with Eddie and his whole family, and then we move on to various other different motley crews and sort of work out where are they from, who are they, where do they hang out, what was the kind of fashion at that time. So I mean, I could talk for hours because there are just so many, so many different looks. And I think Guy definitely likes to identify through style each different gang, so to speak.
I love that. And Gianni, in talking about Ripley, one of the things that's obviously so beautiful about the show is the use of black and white. And so when you're designing costumes for a show that's going to be filmed in black and white, I was interested in how you looked at the idea of color because, you know, a blue isn't going to be seen as blue. It's all these different beautiful shades of gray. So it's very different.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you something that nobody knows about it. Okay, the show is in black and white, but at the very beginning, Steve, the director, he always wanted to be in black and white, but the network wasn't on the same idea. So we had this thing going on between the director and the network, and we didn't know if the show was going to air in black and white or in color. So one day, Steve came in the costume shop and said, we are two costume designers. I'm designing the show with another guy that is not here today. And he said, you guys, I need to tell you something. I don't want you to use colors. And we went like, what do you mean? I mean, how we can do a show without using colors? And he said, yeah, because if they decide they want to air the show in black and white, I want in post-production to desaturate. I don't want colors. I want it to be in black and white anyway. So this for us was a nightmare because we had to get rid of like the 80% of the beautiful stock of original clothing that we found in the costume house for the extras, and even all the fabrics we had to make the new costumes for the cast. We had to get rid of colors. We were only able to use black, white, and 1,000 shades of gray. So at the very beginning was very, very, very scary. But then we start working, we start making photographs to understand, and we understood what we had to concentrate on texture and silhouettes. And well, you saw the show. I don't know if we made it, but it was even more complicated because we didn't use colors. We were not allowed to use colors. Everything you see, it's black and white and gray. This is it.
That's even more impressive when you learn those details. And Michael, in talking about Three Body Problem, it's a show that obviously has science fiction and so many larger than life elements, and yet the way that it grounds itself is through the characters. And I was interested in how that informed the way that you wanted to approach costume design for a lot of the central characters and wanting to capture that sense of intimacy and the grounded aspects of the show.
That's a really great question, and I'm glad we're starting with that because from the very first meeting with David Benioff and Dan Weiss, our showrunners, we talked a lot about the fact that we wanted it not to feel like fantasy, that we really wanted to feel like not science fiction, but sort of science realism, if you know what I mean. We wanted it to feel really real and grounded because I think if you establish a world which seems completely normal and a world that you know, then when things start happening that are kind of unusual, then you can really get the audience on board and take them on this, crazy journey. And, by the end, hopefully, of season, whatever that we do, we'll end up, you know, somewhere very far away from where we started. So it was really interesting, just sort of, yeah, starting a language for the costumes. And we approached how lots of costume designers approach their work. We really ground deep into our research and our thinking about each of the characters, what makes them human. You know, we wanted to put a lot of humanity into the story, because the story can be quite sciencey and very technical and conceptual. So we wanted to make sure that the audience really cared about our characters. So we put a lot of love about thinking about the crazy details of the way we dress in ourselves, the different, you know, the good days, the bad days, the triumphs and the costume fails. And, you know, our main characters were all physicists, so who aren't necessarily known for their sartorial, you know, flair. So it's a real challenge getting those 5 people clearly defined and getting all the really specific stuff that makes them than human beings.
It's so great. And LouLou, in coming back to the gentleman as well, you know, you have Daniel Ings and Theo James's characters at the center of it, and they're such juxtapositions to each other in terms of their personality types. And I was interested in how you approached kind of with the 2 of them as a starting point and figuring out their costumes, and how once you designed their costumes, the way that informed the world around them.
So Freddie, I grew up and knew a lot of Freddies, so Freddie was a very familiar character to me. I've grown up in the countryside, and yeah, for me, Freddie was just designing a whole bunch of my friends together, completely mixed up and crazy. But it was, I think, what was really loving and at the same time quite challenging, especially with Guy, is at the same time as making everybody look heightened and stylized, there's like a fine line between that being a parody, and he wants everything to be believable or plausible, especially in the way they dress. So Eddie's left the family, right? And he's come back home a humble soldier because his dad's about to pass away. So we start the series with him dressed very much like that, as a humble soldier. He's wearing sort of hiking gear and practical gear that you'll sort of see your special forces lads or military lads wearing. Juxtaposed against Freddie, who's just an absolute disaster, almost looks like he's wearing his father's clothes. And I think there's something quite charming about old British country fashion, especially families of the estate. You know, they're not necessarily wealthy people by any means, but the young bloods in those families do tend to start dressing like their parents. And I did kind of want to create that with Freddie's character. So again, it was a lovely juxtapose between Eddie and Freddie, especially when we first see them together, and then slowly Eddie evolves into this gentleman gangster, and you can see his style evolve essentially through each block every 2 episodes. And I like the idea that at the same time as him discovering this gangster within him, he's also being influenced by the people that he's now surrounding himself with. So he's moving out of those practical clothes and moving more into, you know, a beautiful blazer, a beautiful sweater and trousers, and then slowly he's, you know, wearing these beautiful bespoke suits.
I love that idea of kind of like the character journey as well, which brings me back to you, Gianni, because with Tom Ripley as the central character, he's very much at the beginning kind of trying to hide in the shadows, and then he starts trying to become more like Dickie and absorb himself into Dickie's world. And so how did you want to create that arc and that journey of costume for Ripley?
Well, the Tom Ripley is a journey. It's actually quite easy, because we start in New York, and he's trying to hide it because of what he's doing in his life. And we've been looking with Steve, the director. We've been looking for the right stuff to have at the beginning. But then he goes into he meets Dickie. And he starts seeing his things. He starts loving his thing. He's trying to, you know, he wants to become like him. And he changes a few things of his clothing till he kills him, and then he steals everything. He steals his identity, and he steals his clothes. The thing is, we had to create a wardrobe of things that worked with one actor and the other actor. So we had a lot of options. We built a lot of options, and we chose together with the director and the actors, because I'm always working very close to the actor. I need their opinion, because I you know, I like them to wear something they are comfortable with. I don't show up saying, this is the costume, you have to wear it because this is your job. We discuss and we try, you know, I listen to their ideas, I try to improve my ideas, and if they come up with you know, with the reasons, and they make me understand that my idea is wrong, I'm very ready to change and to start from scratch and do some other things. So it was nice. And then he gets, at the end, I don't know if the audience will feel it, he gets his own identity when he's in Venice. We try to change also, to get rid of dicky things, and come up with a new Tom Ripley ready for season 2, if there will ever be one. I don't know yet.
Fingers crossed for all of us. And Michael, you know, you were touching a little bit on this before in terms of, you know, you have these central characters who are all in the physicist world and kind of how that informed them. But I was interested in how you kind of started with Augie as a very central character to the show, and looked overall at the Oxford Five as these characters who exist within the same world, but all have their own very distinct styles within that.
Yep, certainly. It was really important for us to define them really clearly, because as I was saying before, we wanted them to feel like fully fleshed human beings. Not many of us know many physicists and what they look like, many Oxford graduates. So it was really interesting to research into that. And as it turns out, they all took really different life decisions once they graduated. Augie has become a nano technician, and she's more interested in applied technologies. She's very much in the real world, trying to solve real problems with physics. So her costumes have quite a slightly almost corporate, like she's kind of dresses for work. She's got her sort of work uniform on, because she works in a very high level, well-paid position. Jess Hong, who plays Jin, is more of a theoretical physicist, so she lives completely in her mind. She probably doesn't even remember what she put on when she got dressed in the morning. So she has a much more relaxed, detached relationship with her clothing. Then we have at the other end of the spectrum, we have John Bradley playing Jack Rooney, who is he was born with no money, but has recently become a millionaire and wants everyone to know about it, and sort of telegraphs that through his clothing. He wears the most expensive leisure wear, sneakers, baseball caps that money can buy. Saul Adepo plays, Jovan Adepo plays Saul, who is our slacker guy. So he has kind of given up on the world and is kind of hiding in baggy clothes, but he's still sort of, is a bit of a man about town. So he has a bit of a London swagger to him. And then we have Will, who chose to become a high school physics teacher. So he has a very different sartorial vibe to everyone else. So yeah, as it turned out, these 5 physicists all really were able to have quite sharply defined looks to each of them. So I think that helps hopefully the audience navigate this crazy world that we take them through.
It's so great. And you know, Gianni was talking a little bit before about the working relationship with some of the cast on Ripley. And so for all of you, I wanted to just ask about the collaboration with the cast on each of your shows, because it's such a central part to your job, is coming up with these ideas of who these characters are going to be, but then also looking at, you know, an actor's interpretation and some of the ideas that they have about personalities or traits that can inspire ideas for all of you as well. So whoever wants to jump in first.
I'm happy to start. I think what was really interesting about The Gentleman was there were so many characters and they were all so different from each other. And I think that's been a big reason why people have noticed the fashion and the style in the show as much as they have. I mean, when Theo came in for his fitting, he really was not expecting the wardrobe that he got. You know, he knew he was coming back as a humble soldier, but he thought he was going to be straight away in tweed suits in homage to the film. But you know, that we had this style arc, so we talked about that with Guy, and it is very important to have your actors involved in that conversation. And I think it's really always about the people in the clothes, not just the clothes themselves, and how you style it. So, for example, Kaya's wardrobe, when she came to the fitting, she was a little bit like, okay, I still haven't quite worked out who Susie is. And then she came into the fitting room and saw this amazing display of, you know, a mixture of designer luxury clothing and vintage clothing, which was really like a celebration of London style for women, strong, powerful, assertive women. And then, of course, with Daniel coming in, the first thing he saw was the chicken costume. And I don't think I've ever laughed as much as I did in that fitting. So for him, again, we wanted to create this chaotic character, and that was very much what Guy wanted for Freddie too. But to be an honest and sadly relatable, wild character for a lot of people here. So when Daniel came in, I've never laughed as much as I did in that fitting. We just had an absolute blast. And he's just had the one consistency through his wardrobe is the ultimate chaos, really. But yeah, it's absolutely a crucial part of the process I like to have a conversation with the actor first before we go into a fitting, and just send them my mood boards after I've had a good lengthy conversation with the director, Guy Ritchie, on this show. And then in that first conversation with the actor, you can find out what they're feeling about the character. And there are things on your boards that will jump out at them, or things that you'll talk about that I personally as a designer might not have thought about yet. So it is that wonderful collaboration in the beginning, and I'll take those notes and make sure that we take them into consideration when they come for the fitting. So it's all beautifully prepared, and we can kind of create that first capsule wardrobe for the characters so they can leave really knowing who it is that they're playing.
That's
and
great.
it's great fun.
I agree with LouLou, actually. I think it's all about creating trust, isn't it? It's kind of like actors are often quite vulnerable when they come into our fitting room. It's like, what is this show I've signed up for? In our case, it was like, because we were blending 3 genres together in this TV show and trying to create something very new and different. We had contemporary, of course, but we also had science fiction, a weird take on science fiction. We had period stuff going on. So what we did, we set up what we called the war room, where the production designer, Deb Riley, and I plastered the walls of this massive meeting room with like, let me walk you through the show. Here's the environments you're going to be in. Here's our sense of research and what world you might be stepping into. So I think that really helped people think, okay, I know what I'm doing when I come into work today. But it was very challenging, because even the sci-fi stuff for us, like basically it's the actors go into a virtual world, which is supposed to have been created by incredibly advanced alien technology. So they were like, okay, what does that look like? And even though we were going back to specific periods in history, we went to 2000 BC, Shang Dynasty, China. We went to 13th century Mongolia, Elizabethan England. We've jumped all over the place. We wanted to tell the audience that this wasn't just a pure recreation of history. So even though the textures were really, oh my gosh, I can touch, I can smell the clothes. This is a very detailed video game, virtual reality. And yet their hair was modern, their glasses were modern. So kind of like the character design finished at the neck. So there was these kind of weird juxtapositions that gave the audience a clue of like, okay, this isn't your average, historical flashback. So yeah, I think it's just holding the actors' hands through all of this, assuring them that it's all going to make sense, and helping them with their process of like how they fit into the big puzzle of a show that is as epic as this one.
I love that. And for you, Gianni, what were some of kind of the key touch points that came from your relationships with the cast on Ripley?
Well, usually I try to have a very good relationship with the cast. But you have to think that the first time you meet them, usually because they don't have time to come earlier, you're the person who says, "Can you please get undressed?" So, for the feeling, and this is really something that I always think about it. Poor thing. I mean, they travel, across the ocean all night, and they're jet lagged, and then they are thrown away in this room with this unknown guy that they never met before that asks them, you know, to get undressed. So you have to, you know, to be sensitive and understand. But anyway, I try to discuss the first time. If I can, I don't want anyone to be there. I just want to be there alone with them to discuss what I thought, you know, the character should look like. And then we start trying things together, and I see how things work on the body, because you can do sketches, you can do whatever you want, but when you are with a body to dress, things they talk to you. They sometimes the most beautiful dress doesn't work. You don't know why, but just doesn't work, and you have to, you know, you have to understand and change your mind. And so the first fitting, it's just between me and them. I like to understand their body, how things work on their body, and to talk about the character and to listen to their ideas. And then if I can, I take a couple of days to reset things and maybe get new stuff, maybe alter the things that I have. And it usually works, but it's nice to work very, very close to them. I mean, I prefer to, you know, to not use one costume that maybe took me a lot of work to do. It was a lot of, but they don't like it because they will never wear it in the right way. It's better to give up because they have to feel good. They have to feel right. And I had a wonderful, wonderful cast. You know, Andrew Scott was amazing. He came in with a lot of very good idea. We discussed, we made it happen, and we worked very close. Johnny Flynn and Dakota, she's a dream to work with. Dakota, she's very, very nice, and it's magic. As soon as, you know, she starts wearing the costume, she changes her posture, she changes her voice. You just see, it's thrilling, it's amazing. She's a wonderful actress. We had a very good relationship with all the cast in Ripley. Very, very good. Yeah.
So wonderful. And LouLou, you were talking a little bit before about the chicken costume in the series, which is hands down one of my favorite outfits in the whole show. But I love the fact that not only is it so intricately detailed, but that you've also clearly thought about the movement and motion that was needed in the scenes that it was going to be used in, because there's so much stunt work going on as well in that chicken costume in the first couple of episodes. And so what were some of the intricacies that went into creating a costume that was not only intricate, but also very functional?
It's so interesting what you say, because I think because it's such a ridiculous over-the-top costume, everyone's noticed it, of course, and they think, wow, look at the drama. But that much detail goes into every single look, even if it's the most simple looking outfit. And I think that's a lot of the time people, the audience, don't know, unless you're a costume designer or you're in a costume team. And I'm sure my fellow designers here will agree, people don't know that just as much work goes into every single look. But that particular costume, I mean, I get a lot of inspiration just by talking to my director, the actors, from magazines, from paintings. I have like a library full of books, whether it's fashion history, art. And that particular costume, I mean, I got the inspiration from a line that Tommy Dixon says, where he says that he wants to make Freddie admit that he's a cock. And I was like, okay, great. So instead of doing a chicken suit, I'm going to do a cockerel costume. And I found this beautiful painting of a cockerel costume, and I just took that to my makers and I said, right, this is what we're going to do with real feathers. And I found some wonderful inspiration from Elton John and all of his dramatic outfits, and, you know, mascots from sports games. And I wanted to create something completely unique to the show. I was adamant that that was going to be, you know, the advertorial look for Freddie. I wanted it to be on billboards, and we got there. But I just wanted it to be incredibly fun, dramatic, totally ridiculous, not what anyone's expecting. And in order to have that, I think heightened the trauma of that scene with Freddie as well, because it's actually this really devastating mental breakdown that he's having. And he completely loses the plot, and, you know, does what he does at the end of that whole scene. So I think the fun and the drama of that costume, and like you said, I envisioned him on the quad bike and the feathers moving and it just being really beautiful and devastating and utterly bonkers. But like I said, that comes into every single look. We have so many characters, so many brilliant, different journeys that everyone goes through. And I think because of that, I think by having Eddie's character and his style versus Freddie versus Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Uncle Stan, Stanley Johnson with the T, and then you have this wonderful female lead, you know, London gangster played by Kaya, who's absolutely phenomenal. I think because of all these completely different gangsters that we combine into one motley crew, which is so iconic to Guy Ritchie, really. His leads are always this utter bunch of motley crew. And I think because they all have such brilliant and different style, it's kind of brought this wonderful extra attention to the show. But again, it's always about the actors in their looks that kind of bring it all to life.
No, you're absolutely right. And Michael, you were talking before as well about all of the different time periods that you have to go to within the show, and the details are obviously so intricate for each one. And I was interested in just what the research process looks like for you and your team, because you could spend weeks and months on any individual one. So it's really looking at all of the research that you could dive into and what are the most useful tools for figuring out the scenes that we need.
Yeah, I think I'm quite, I guess, intuitive as far as research goes. I like to cast the net really wide beyond like the obvious sources. And like LouLou was saying, you know, get inspired by paintings or video games or contemporary art or whatever is sort of part of the dialogue at any given time. But for me, what was really interesting and kind of poignant on this production was looking into the very sort of sensitive time of the Chinese Cultural Revolution in the 1960s and 70s. And so that segment of our show, we wanted to have a particular groundedness to. And you know, it's a period in history where there's so many different perspectives on, you know, exactly what happened, why it was happening, how it affected people. So we wanted to really do our research as much as possible and go super deeply into it. So there was actually, you know, there's lots of propaganda images from that period. So that's one version of the reality. We wanted to go way beyond that and to really just think about the human beings that were going through these incredible cultural forces and how each person reacted to that. You know, there was a bit of a uniform look to Chinese citizens at that time with the Mao suit. But then, like any uniform, individuals find a way of like expressing their own identity within this very restricted palette. So that was really fascinating to think about how people express themselves with very limited resources. We had to make all of the costumes from that segment in our show because we couldn't source any existing ones. So that was amazing to think about the fabrics of what was available, the fact that no one wanted to wear silk because that was associated with the old bad times, and it was all about practical cottons and some wool, but mostly cotton, even in the height of a Chinese winters. And so yeah, it was just a fascinating deep dive into this amazing period. So yeah, there's that, as well as all of the other research things. We had a big research team because even in the contemporary world, we were going to, you know, CERN in Switzerland, we were going to the UN in New York, Panama Canal, the slums of Mexico. We just jumped everywhere. So you really just have to be on top of each of those worlds that you're slicing into and try and, you know, portray each one with as much good faith and accuracy as possible.
It's wonderful. And Gianni, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was you've kind of created this very specific sense of look and feel and style for each of the locations within Italy, and each of the different locations that Ripley goes to. And so how did you decide what you wanted each area to feel like?
Well, again, it was all from a big, very, very big research that we did. We met with Steve at first, and then we start doing this research. And I was very lucky because a production designer, a friend of mine from Naples, he said there was this thing of huge photographs never seen before. This archive, and I went there and I spent like a week in their archives because it's all negative. They're not printed, and I chose all the stuff. And I was very lucky because I found this a lot of material from the Amalfi Coast, from Naples, from Rome, from Venice. It was huge. It was so big and was so good and so nice that when the director saw it, he said, "Can I take it home?" And that was really, really, really very nice. So we printed another copy for him to take home. And then we talked to him, and he wanted to give Sicily another character from Naples, from Rome, from Venice, from other places in Italy, and of course from New York. And we decided, luckily we had a good budget for the costume. We decided we were not going to use the costume we were using in Rome, because Rome was, La Dolce Vita, and Naples was another thing, and Sicily was another thing completely. We only used some costume for that location, and we did, and we tried to give characters to all the extras, and together with the actor. But the research, the big research, it's a very beautiful research that we've done. We've done thousands and thousands and thousands of beautiful photos that I'm keeping, because it's very, very nice. It will be great to make a book, but unfortunately there are so many copyright issues. You can't do that, because every photo you need to find out if it's copyright free or whatever. So I'll keep it for myself and for friends.
I love that. Well, I'm so impressed and in awe with the incredible designs that you've all created on your shows. So thank you so much for sharing all of this and talking about this today.
Oh, thank you very much for having us. And I'm so happy that I was able to meet these two wonderful colleagues that I admire the work they've done. And I wish you the best.
Absolutely. I second that. I've watched both of your shows completed, and they're absolutely incredible in completely different ways. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure for me too to meet you guys. And I hope maybe one day we'll actually be in the same space together and be able to continue the dialogue.
Hopefully, finger crossed.